Farmers, trust is everything. At Genesis Fertilizers, we're not just proposing to build a facility, we're building a future designed for you. With real progress already underway, we're closer to providing Western Canadian farmers with a reliable, locally produced fertilizer supply. Now is the time to take control of your farm's future. Learn more at genesisfertilizers.com/credibility.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to the bonus component here of the RealAg Radio podcast. We're having so much, we didn't get to all the topics, and we knew that was going to happen because the team floods in all these topics, and there's just too many. And we have lots to say here. One of the things we didn't get to on the show on Sirius XM today was this question of who would be better to deal with the Trump administration, Prime Minister Trudeau or conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. And Abacus Data actually asked this question, and it's pretty clear, from a people perspective, who Canadians feel would be better suited to do this. So when asked the question, which leader would Trump prefer to work with as prime minister, 59% of Canadians said Pierre Poilievre. Even 45% of Liberals said Pierre Poilievre. Like, talk about writing on the wall for Prime Minister Trudeau. Lindsay, how do we interpret this from your perspective?
Well, I guess, are there surprises in this? If you've been following along with what Abacus Data has been polling for the last little while, probably not. And so David Coletto he and his team have been asking several of these questions. And ultimately, the message of just driving home that Trudeau is so done just keeps coming up, no matter which question they seem to ask or how they seem to phrase it. Even, people who voted for Trudeau, those who are card-carrying Liberals, those who plan to or would vote Liberal in the next election will still tell you so long as it's not Trudeau. So there's a portion of that population too. So are we surprised at the outcome or the opinion? Absolutely not. Now, I think that there's probably more nuance to it than that. I think that I don't know because it's not entirely asked, although I think there is a follow-up question about, getting a good deal for Canada. I'm trying to think of not what I think of Poilievre or what I think of Trudeau. I'm trying to think of the people that they are, the way they do things, the policies that they believe in, etc. When sitting down across from Trump, how that would play out is a big question. Like, I think, Trudeau going down to Mar-a-Lago and having dinner with Trump, I think actually went over really well as far as within the inner circles of that. Like, I think that Trudeau probably fits into that circle a lot easier, more naturally than a Pierre Poilievre, right? He is a career politician. He's he speaks in these, which maybe is the same as Trump. He speaks in these alliterations constantly and these speaking points. To me, it's more like I don't actually see the two of them having a lot in common, or the things that they do have in common, they're just going to butt heads over. So as much as I'm not saying that, Trudeau needs to stay in power. He's not going to. It doesn't matter anyway. But this idea somehow that Poilievre is going to be the slam dunk on dealing with Trump, I just don't necessarily agree. So my take on all this is that the numbers reflect what people think of Trudeau, not necessarily a huge endorsement of Poilievre.
So there's a couple other questions here. So which leader has the best chance of achieving a positive outcome for Canada with Trump? 45% of Canadians saying Poilievre, 20% saying Trudeau. Again, where is it here? Current Liberals, 12% said Poilievre, and 66% of them said Trudeau. So, Kelvin, the numbers, either question, the numbers show that Canadians believe, rightly or wrongly, there's a perception here that Pierre Poilievre is the one to carry the flag for Canada when it comes to any sort of trade negotiation.
Yeah, and some of this, I think, goes back to broader, maybe not so much personality. Lindsay touched on some of the personality differences, and I agree that Trudeau, his main benefit or advantage is that he floats in that Mar-a-Lago crowd a lot easier than I think a Poilievre would. It would be more awkward for Poilievre.
Yeah.
Poilievre and a J. Vance crowd, I think, would get along well. They're more cut out of the same cloth, but I'm not sure Poilievre and Trump, the personal relationship would be as I think Trudeau and Trump actually. I think Trump actually enjoys hosting Trudeau and spending time with Trudeau. I think though the broader issue here is that Trudeau's support is so low that he doesn't have a united front here when it comes to Canada's negotiations. And so I think that's why people are picking Poilievre here and Conservatives, because there is so much support for them, or at least that's what the polls are showing. And if we had a federal election that the Conservatives want a majority in, I think Canada's negotiating team and the provinces would have to pull in behind Poilievre and the federal government, whereas right now we're seeing provinces go at it on their own. In many cases, it's not as much of a united front. I think in terms of personalities, Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, we've talked about this the last few weeks. I think having him as the point person for Canada may actually be an advantage for that personal relationship with Donald Trump, because Ford and Trump do politics the same way. They speak the same way. They engage with voters in the same way, I would say. And so I think that's where there's more of a personality fit. I think these polls showing Poilievre as having the best chance, it's more about the Conservative Party and having that mandate where voters have said, we want you in charge. We want this party calling the shots. Right now, the Liberals have lost that. And so I think that's why people are frustrated.
Yeah, you bring up
not.
Vance, because I think of Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta. I think she's almost like a little bit more JD Vance circle than with Trump too, right? So it could be interesting, the role, because you think about in the first NAFTA renegotiation, Mike Pence, vice president, played a bit of a role, but I wouldn't say that he was a targeted, person for Canada. That may change in this round, where maybe Canada working really hard on former Iowa Senator JD Vance and working that angle more so than we did the last time.
Well,
Ohio, right?
yeah.
But Lindsay?
Well, I was going to say, if I may, statistically speaking, he may end up president. So, only because Trump is 78 years old. He will be 82. Men don't live as long as women. The average age is, mid 70s. So I'm just saying
Yeah.
Vance could end up president, statistically speaking. So maybe that's not a bad thing. Let's have all our politicians meet with all their politicians and keep all our options open.
I said Iowa
just putting it out
Senator. I meant Ohio.
Ohio.
Sorry about
They're
that.
so much the
I
same. It's
miss
okay.
I misspoke. And I think if you look at which leader would Trump prefer to work with as prime minister, the 23% of Canadians saying don't know, and the 26% of Canadians, when asked which leader would get the best outcome, 26% said don't know. I think that might be where the smart money is, to be honest, because I have speculation, or I have thoughts. I can argue, like I've said to audience and speeches, I can argue both sides of this. How Trudeau would be better, and I can argue how Poilievre would be better. I think at the end of the day, getting a positive outcome is a super big challenge, and I think the challenge is bigger this time than it was the last time. In reality, so I think the 26% that are saying don't know, they might be the ones that are choosing the right selection there. And what really speaks poorly of Trudeau, before we wrap up, is the question was, which party is best able to handle the issue? And there's a number of different issues here, and there's a lot of blue on the screen for the Conservatives, except for one. And the one where people think the Liberal Party is better to deal with the issue, 31% of Canadians saying Donald Trump and his administration. So although people think that Poilievre is a much better choice to deal with Trump, they don't think that for the Conservative Party. They think it for the Liberals. So, Kelvin, this is very damning for the Prime Minister.
Yeah, this is a tough one, because to me, in some ways, this is conflicting data here versus what we've just been talking about for the last 10 minutes. But I think that, this shows that the party has a better brand than the prime minister right now. And that's something that I think, like Lindsay said, it just seems like everywhere you look right now, Trudeau has no chance of coming back, and that he's toast. And this is showing that the party has a better rating here than what the Prime Minister does.
Why would you want to go down with the ship like this?
It's a very loaded question. And having never been Prime Minister, I don't know that I can answer.
Is that what it is, though? It's like you're the Prime Minister. Like, you just don't leave that job unless people tell you got to leave it? Like, maybe that's why?
Yeah.
There's just an opportunity to take an exit ramp here, to take the off ramp, and it's a very interesting question, I think. And I'm not saying it like flippantly. I'm being serious, trying to get into the mind here to understand the why. Because
an off ramp though, I think that was back in fall when there was actually some talk about that. It's all gone quiet now. There's no talk about anybody pushing the Prime Minister out from inside the party or inside caucus, and so it's hang on as long as we can is sure what it's looking like. That's the scenario facing, and that's why we have this GST holiday on our Christmas trees if you want to buy December 17th or whatever it is.
That's a wreck. What a wreck that is. Like, Canadian Federation of Independent Business has done a great job of like showcasing the challenges and the burden that this administration of this has put on small business. Woo.
Well, and
that the burden to the federal coffers too. Now they're talking $8 billion cost to this addition to the deficit. So we're taking the deficit from 40 or 42 to 47, 40, 50, somewhere in that range, just to stay in power for a few more months, kind of thing is what it looks like.
But that doesn't matter, Kelvin, at this point, right? I mean, what's another few billion? And I'm being completely facetious because it does matter. But it is a disaster. And it's one of those that it's not like we didn't see this coming. We have an incredibly complicated tax code in Canada. Doing something like removing GST from certain items and not others just creates an absolute headache. It's only for 60 days. Like, what on earth are we doing here, people? Like, come on. It really shouldn't even. So I'm just ticked it even went forward because honestly, I don't think it should have because it is so incredibly silly and such an incredible waste of money and time. And honestly, the actual impact on the everyday Canadian's wallet is going to be dollars.
It's so minimal.
That's it. It's minimal. And sure, there's lots of people who be like, yep, great, I saved some dollars. I get that, cool, but it's not going to help you make a rent payment if that's the struggle right now. It's not going to help you find a house, or it's not really going to help you afford new snow pants for your kid. Like a few dollars per household really doesn't change diddly squat. So it's stupid.
Somebody shared with me the Prime Minister this morning was talking about, maybe it was yesterday, that he's going to crack down on Verbo rentals.
Okay. Yeah.
To create more.
Yeah, he's tweeting Airbnb and Verbo this week saying that all those buildings, houses should be opened up to the housing market. That would help the housing supply.
But what are we cracking down on?
Yeah.
Like
the short-term rentals, getting rid of them.
So you can't have a passive. So we're now trying to eliminate passive income. People having an asset
that's right.
they paid for. It's passive income because they're renting it out. Like, really?
Yeah. And so are we just one step away from let's just seize people's assets? Right? Like it just
only own one home.
This is full circle to our farmland discussion at the beginning.
Exactly.
Like
who should be able to? Yeah.
Housing, is it just the people who live in it? That's kind of what the Prime Minister was implying.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We have solved all the problems. So moving on.
We're at 5 out of the 20 things on our list of things to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. We did well.
We have a lot. We got a lot to do. Fridays are busy around here.
They really are. Yeah.
Awesome
but
stuff. Everybody, please. I always say, provide feedback. Continue to provide your feedback. We love to hear from you in terms of what your thoughts are and your opinions on some of the things that we talked about. Like, sometimes Lindsay says some stuff that I question as well. I want to hear from you. shaney@realagriculture.com. I'm just having some fun. Everybody have yourself a great weekend. Cheers, everybody.